Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine, remembered with Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi, Nasser al-Mashni and Robert Martin. Our episode today will be dedicated to the painful memory of Sabra and Shatila massacre. Stay with us.
Good morning, listeners. A somber day as we commemorate 40 years since the brutal massacre of Palestinian residents of the refugee camp Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon. Join Yusuf, Robert and I as we share a show from our archive.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yusuf, Robert.
Good morning. Good morning, listeners.
This week marks the 35th anniversary of a very sad chapter of the Palestinian modern history. Nasser and I and Robert, of course, we will talk about the Sabra and Shatila memory.
6th of June 1982, Israel invades Lebanon with the stated aim of rooting out the Palestinian Liberation Organization and in their ideal world to transform Lebanon into a Christian ally. They wanted to install a Christian government and create a peace treaty to the north of Lebanon. They quickly moved all the way north and surrounded Beirut, and obviously, as Israel's wont is, they put a siege on the city of Beirut. By August 21, the United States had broken an agreement between the parties, and the agreement allowed for the safe evacuation of the Palestinian fighters, for the PLO to leave Lebanon and to move to other Arab countries under the supervision of Western nations. But one of the core principles in writing was the guarantee of protection of Palestinian refugees and the civilian residents of the Palestinian refugee camps. I mean, this was a very important part.
It's important to mention, Nasser, that 82 had been 7 years for the beginning of the Lebanese civil war. And in these 7 years before or leading to the invasion of Lebanon, the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Lebanese resistance forces were on their own fighting the Israeli violations of Lebanese sovereignty over and over and over again, whether attacking refugee camps or Lebanese targets. And it's also worth mentioning that the few months leading to the invasion, there was a ceasefire agreement supported by the United Nations between PLO/Lebanese resistance and Israel. So by invading Lebanon, Israel didn't only broke the sovereignty of Lebanon, but also broke the UN-sponsored agreement.
Well, they're not shy in doing that, as we know. So part of the agreement was the United States deployed Marines to Lebanon as part of a multinational force. Yasser Arafat Abu Ammar left Lebanon
after heroic resistance.
Heroic resistance, absolutely. And those images of him, in his battle fatigues, leaving victorious from Lebanon. The ceasefire included those written guarantees, and the Marines departed on September 10. After the American withdrawal, the Israeli military was in full control of West Beirut, which includes Sabra and Shatila.
And it's important to say that West Beirut didn't fall during the siege. It fell after PLO left.
Left, correct.
So that's why they still have the right. The Palestinians and the Lebanese say that we did not surrender.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And this is some stuff from the Kahan Commission, which was Israel's official report into the massacre. On the morning of the 15th of September, Israeli Defense Minister Ariel Sharon held a meeting with the IDF Chief of Staff, Itan, at the IDF's forward command post on the roof of a 5-story building 200 metres southwest of the Shatila camp. In attendance, now listen to this group, were Sharon's aide, Avi Dudai, the Director of Military Intelligence, Yeshua Sagoy, a senior Mossad officer, General Amir Droy, General Amos Yaron, an intelligence officer, the head of GSS, Avraham Shalom, the Deputy Chief of Staff, General Moshe Levy, and other senior officers. At that meeting, this is the Kahan Commission said, this is the Israeli report into the massacre almost a year later. It was agreed amongst these people that they will allow the Maronite Christian Phalange Party, the Kata'ib, and Eli Habaka into the camps.
El-Hubeka is the commander of the Phalangists and the leader of that operation, who actually led the butchering and the massacre of the Palestinians. So the Israelis, by mentioning these names, and we have to remember that this is an Israeli investigation. So assume that we had an independent
as independent as it might be. But this is the Wednesday. Now, the massacres happened Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. So this is on the Wednesday. This group met together, and this is where they agreed. By noon of the 15th of September, so this is the morning, now we're talking lunchtime, Sabra and Shatila are surrounded by the IDF. They've set up checkpoints, not allowing anybody in or out. The exits and entrances are manned, and they're using a number of multi-story buildings in the surrounds of Sabra and Shatila as observation posts. Amongst them was the seven-story Kuwaiti embassy, and according to Time magazine, this building had an unobstructed and panoramic view of Sabra and Shatila.
Sabra and Shatila are very small camps of Beirut, and we're talking about something like 2 square kilometers maximum.
Yep. So hours later, Sharon orders the IDF to start bombing, the tanks to start shelling Sabra and Shatila to soften the area, and the bombardment continued throughout the afternoon and into the early evening of the 15th of September.
And of course, on the 14th of September was the assassination of Bashir al-Jumayl, the Lebanese president, and of course the Israelis played into the anger of the Phalangists. Their leader was assassinated, and of course when we say Bashir al-Jumayl, he was the Israeli-backed president of Lebanon, and he was not assassinated by Palestinians nor Lebanese resistance, and nevertheless the Israelis directed their anger and their...
The Israelis told the Maronites that in fact it was the Palestinians that did it. We know where they are. They're in Sabra and Shatila. You need to go in there and clean this up for yourselves. On the night of the 16th of September 1982, the IDF opened the doors and ushered the Kataib in and allowed them unfettered access into these 2 Palestinian refugees. Defenseless, we have to say defenseless. Remember that these camps, West Beirut, never fell in all of the 88 odd days of the invasion of Israel into Lebanon. The PLO resistance fighters are now no longer in Lebanon to protect them. The Americans, who had signed an agreement that would allow for Palestinians to be protected, are not there. The Israelis have surrounded this 2 odd square miles, bombed it with tanks for a day and almost a day, have now let in the Phalangists, who they've told the murderer of your Prime Minister, your leader, Bashir al-Jumayl, is in this camp.
And these are civilians?
Civilians, mum, dads,
100% civilians, because we're talking about
not a gun in the camp.
The few weeks that followed the expulsion of fighters. And they made sure that all fighters would leave Beirut particularly. And so when we say that this is a civilian target, we mean it. It's a purely civilian target.
Yep. In the ensuing rampage, the Kataib raped, killed and dismembered up to 3,500 people. To make sure that the bloodbath did not stop at night time, the Israeli tanks sent up flares, luminescent flares, throughout the night to lighten, so that they didn't have to stop. So you don't have to slow down because it's night time. Here's these flares so you can keep going. Nearly all of the dead were women, children, elderly men. And I want to talk just quickly about what we're talking about here. People tortured, blackened bodies smelling of roasted flesh from the power shocks that had convulsed their bodies before their hearts gave out, the electric wires still tied around their lifeless limbs. People with gouged out eye sockets, faces unrecognizable with gaping holes that had been plunged them into darkness before their lives were thankfully ended. Women raped, not once, but 2, 3, 4 times, horribly violated, their legs shamelessly ripped apart, and not even the cover of clothing to preserve their dignity at the moment of death. Children dynamited alive. So many body parts ripped from their tiny torsos, so hard to know whom they belonged to, just mounds of bloodied limbs amongst the tousled heads of children in pools of blood. Entire families executed, lined up against the wall, blood upon blood, more blood sprayed on the walls, whole families axed to death in a frenzy. I mean, it just beggars belief. And these are quotes from different journalists. And Janet Leigh, she was an American journalist, some of those were hers, later wrote to her husband, "I saw dead women in their houses with their skirts up to their waists. I mean, legs spread apart, dozens of young men shot after being lined up against an alley wall, children with their throats slit, pregnant women with their stomachs chopped open. I mean, just sickening stuff.
Were you saying that there's never been a charge laid? There's never been a proper investigation? I mean, this is premeditated massacre.
The first attempt to bring the perpetrators to court was 15 years later, and it was intercepted by the assassination of the main suspect, Elih Beqa, that Nasser mentioned.
Yep.
And he was only assassinated when there was a court, but he was welcomed to Damascus and other Arab cities as a minister. So not only he got away with the murder, he was rewarded and became a minister in a Lebanese cabinet. So we're talking about a complicity from elements from within Lebanon, from Syria, from the Arab world, and internationally.
So the IDF surrounded a village, threw bombs, grenades, tanks to loosen them up. And then for at least 24 hours, 48 hours...
They unleashed...
Almost 3 days.
For 3 days straight, they killed, butchered, murdered, anything that they saw. And bodies were found tied up?
Oh, mate, just sickening stuff you can't even imagine. But in that, the Israelis gave the Kataib speed to keep them awake, alcohol to keep the orgy just going. I mean, it's sickening shit.
And we're talking about, an estimated number of 600 fighters raiding 2 small suburbs of Beirut, 2 small camps, circled camps, and they distributed their time into rooster or shifts so that fighters would, when they feel tired of butchering people, because it's, you get tired.
Laborious.
And so you would sleep until other people take your role, and then you wake up again, and. So we're talking about systematic, orchestrated act of death that was thrown onto civilians, and that took place for nearly 3 days.
Well, I mean, that's unequivocally a terrorist organisation. I mean, that's unequivocally, and we talk about ISIS and Daesh.
The UN, in fact, ended up calling it a genocide, but and some family members took Ariel Sharon to the Belgian court and endeavoured to put a prosecution to bear there. The Americans then interceded into the Belgians and said, you can't try a foreign person. They appealed, and by then the jurisdiction of crimes against humanity went to The Hague, and they said the cut-off point is 2002, and that happened in 1982, so it's beyond the jurisdiction of this court, and so the action never ever went anywhere.
Look, they're sitting there dormant, still.
Well, nothing can happen. It's there's no court that can hear it.
The families of the people that,
as it was happening, there was no coverage. So the first sign of coverage, or the first spotlights of media coverage, was maybe 3 days later or 4 days later.
Yeah, I think Fisk went in a day and a bit in, and said something. There was enough to come out that the Americans actually knew something was going on. Ronald Reagan called Menachem Begin and said, "What the?" But didn't actually fulfill his obligation as a human being.
But in terms of international public opinion,
it wasn't until day 5, day 6.
And Robert Fisk wrote an important book about that, "Pity the Nation."
Yep.
And I encourage our listeners to read it.
He wrote a piece I remember reading years ago, maybe 1997. It was at the 15-year anniversary. Here we are, 35 years later. But he said, imagine if Palestinians had killed 3,500 Jews. Would this day not be commemorated? Would we not know the names of? Would we? And here we are in Great Britain. He wrote the article from. 15 years later, not a mention of it anywhere. Not even a little paragraph.
Let alone that people don't know what Sabra and Shatila is.
So in 1983, the Kahan Commission was put together, and it concluded with a couple of important findings. Ultimately, that the Israeli leaders were indirectly responsible, but that Ariel Sharon, then the defense minister and later prime minister, bore personal responsibility for failing to prevent them and for ignoring the danger of bloodshed and revenge. The fact is he ended up losing his ministry, but he was a minister without portfolio in that government, then went on to become prime minister and
and the leader of another party.
Another party.
People loved him because of it? in Israel?
Well, I would say it. Look, we don't want to say because of that.
I'm asking. I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
But people or the Israelis who vote for fear-driven agenda would see in somebody like Sharon as the person who is able to bring law and order and security.
To protect them. We should say also when the details of the massacre came out, there were protests in Tel Aviv. You know, significant tens of thousands of people came out and said, "This
could be the biggest in the history of Israel."
Not in the name of Judaism. The reality is those Jews of 1982, they're not about anymore any great number. I mean, if you're a leftist today, I mean, you have a look at Benjamin Netanyahu's son, who's posted a picture on Facebook or Twitter with, a full anti-Semitic. I mean, it's just crazy what he would do, and he now calls anti-Arab, anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic stuff, yeah. But he's the right of Israel aligns itself now with the white supremacist movement, and anybody that's left of us, those leftists, they're the Nazis today, in the mindset of the far right. If you're a lefty, if you're a peace-loving person, you're actually the Nazi.
Well, a normal person would have done everything to stop the massacre, but these guys...
Ariel Sharon facilitated it. Ariel Sharon and his buddies, I mean, these guys planned, they knew what would happen. They knew that if they, fed the phalangists who, for a huge chunk of time, these guys don't even think they're Arab, the Phoenicians. That the death of their leader was done by somebody in there. Those Palestinians are all responsible. You're not an Arab. You're not a Muslim. These people aren't like you. The world would be better for you if you weren't there. This sort of stuff. And I mean, the cadre of people that were there at that meeting on the morning of the day before. I mean, these are luminaries, yeah, senior people, yeah. Ariel Sharon, who's the defence minister, I mean, the Australian defence minister never attends a battleground. He's sitting in Canberra, but there he is with his own aide, the director of military intelligence, a senior Mossad officer, the intelligence head of GSS, the deputy chief of staff. I mean, this is,
they know what's going on.
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're there saying, okay, tomorrow we're going to do this. Shit.
So this year is the 35th anniversary of Sabra and Shatila, the day that humanity really witnessed a black chapter. And I say black not because it's, we don't want to compare 3,000 versus 500,000 somewhere else. It's because they didn't get the coverage they deserve. The murderers got away with it, and Israel is still enjoying the reputation of spreading peace and being the only victim in the region. When in fact, without it, definitely this is a black and white type of fact. Had it not been for the Israelis, the phalangists wouldn't have invaded Sabra and Shatila.
Just when you say too, though, it's you don't want to compare the numbers, 3,000 versus 3 million. To me, it's no different. I mean, they've treated these people, mums and dads and kids and animals, with cold heart, burnt them, done everything they possibly can. That's as horrific as killing 3 million people. What's the difference? These are civilians that have done nothing other than be in the wrong place.
I think, Rob, where the difference is that, if you want to bring in, the Holocaust, is that Nazi Germany had a systematic campaign to rid the world of all Jews. We're not saying that the Jews were in a situation where they're trying to rid the world of all Palestinians, but certainly they enabled all the Palestinians of Sabra and Shatila to be slaughtered that weekend.
I remember watching a documentary on Sabra and Shatila recently, where a woman devastated by and couldn't believe what was happening, because imagine now we're saddened and torn apart talking about it 35 years later. Imagine having to go through it and having to witness it. So she was saying that she said in Arabic, استنوا الرجال يطلعوا بعدين فاتوا, which means that they waited for men fighters to leave and then came to the camps. What is more coward than this?
These were defenseless, elderly, women, children.
I just think it's another one of these, I feel sorry for the Palestinians. I can see you guys are deeply moved by it. But the fact that this is another thing that they've had to live through that's been swept under the carpet, and they're labelled the terrorists, and they're labelled the haters.
This is why we still talk about them, and we will always talk about them. And this is, if there is any Palestinian who has relatives from Sabra and Shatila or inside Sabra and Shatila today. We want to tell them that we will never forget that moment, and we will keep remembering and commemorating that tragedy forever.
So, Nasser, as a Palestinian, I mean, obviously you grew up with it all. What was your recollection when this was occurring? Because your dad would have been telling you, and you were old enough to understand.
Yeah. So I was 12 when this happened, and I remember, it wasn't unusual for us to see Dad crying. It wasn't unusual because he wore the pain of Palestine very, very close to his heart. But I remember, this is the first demonstration I think, beyond actually knowing that I was there, I actually remember it happening and being there in 1982 when with the invasion of Lebanon, but in particular this invasion. Because what happens with demonstrations is people get demo fatigue. They come out on day one, but here we are sort of 10 weeks later still demoing every weekend. Sabra and Shatila happened, and there was 6 of us. Yeah, my family and my uncle, and I just remember the pain. Dad was inconsolable. We're all just couldn't believe it. I mean, the pictures were so graphic, and the pictures were 3 and 4 days later. So the bodies had decomposed and were bloated, and I mean, just horrible kids cut in half, and just an orgy of blood.
I think it's fair to say that Palestinians' lives were no longer the same after Sabra and Shatila. This massacre was a turning point in our memory and history, even though we witnessed many, many defeats and massacres. And I say this because of the sheer pain we still have in our hearts. When you bombard with one big bomb a village or a city, and then you kill 5,000 people, it's tragic, and you killed a whole population. But it is more tragic when you go one by one. You kill these 5,000 people one by one. You take your time, you smoke, you have fun, you sing, and you butcher innocent people. And we're talking about, like Nasser said, women, children, elderly people, and you take
Defenseless.
pleasure. You take pleasure in doing so. So this is what we are talking about when it comes to Sabra and Shatila.
And the promise that the world had made us. The promise was, we will look after your people. You can leave America. It was a written agreement too. It wasn't just a handshake. It was written.
It was a written agreement that PLO, after PLO leaves, the refugee camps will be protected, and it was under the custody of the Americans. But we were let down by all
humanity.
By humanity. We were let down by the Lebanese. I don't want to say all of them. By elements from Lebanon, and we were let down by the foreign policy of the United States and the world. And of course, I don't want to say let down, but our enemy Israel took the biggest role of making sure that this massacre takes place to its fullest extent.
Well, my heart goes out to everybody, because people can't see you guys. I mean, I'm pretty emotional now from seeing it. It's like Nasser's been, you're living it again. But I think one of the biggest tragedies is that the Palestinians are demonised, and you hear the stories of Nasser's father crying, I
was maybe too young to remember details or to understand, but old enough to feel the pain in our family. My father is a poet. He wrote a collection of poems titled Hallat min Sabra Ashtar, and it was an open wound, and still is, that we're still bleeding, and until the day justice prevails and the Israelis and the remaining of criminals are brought to court. Before we end the program, we have to acknowledge the heroic act of an Australian, Sean Oliver of Craigieburn, who was in Wollongong last or a few days ago. Sean lost his life trying to save some Palestinian
I
children.
think we should just say, he lost his life in an act of heroism trying to save children.
Trying to save children who happened to be from Palestine.
Palestine.
He didn't know
No.
It didn't matter to him,
And
I'm
he's
sure.
left a beautiful wife and 3 children of his own now who won't have a father.
What a devastating...
What a man, just to get up and go
and
not worry about it.
Enter really terrible surf, yeah.
And on behalf of us, the 3 of us in this room, and the Palestinians and all people who just look at each other as humans, we want to acknowledge his selfless heroism, and we want to condole and to send our sincere condolences to his family, his wife, his kids, and all Australians. And in fact, we spoke to the family of the Palestinian children who were saved by Sean and others, and they actually sent us this message. So this is the message of the family of Ahmed Qasim Hamad. The message goes to the family of Sean Oliver in recognition and acknowledgement of his heroic act.
Hi, I'd just like to say a few words on behalf of the Hamad family and myself. We are deeply saddened by the tragic loss of Sean Oliver. We are still actually in shock by this tragic incident. Therefore, I am finding it really hard to speak because we are still in shock and deeply saddened. Even though we didn't know Sean Oliver, we feel as though we are still mourning over his death, and it's been really hard these past few days. Because even though this man, we didn't know him at all, it is as if we have known him for a very long time. Please accept our condolences and just know that Sean has died a hero and will always be remembered as a truly genuine human being who did risk his life to save another human being's life, and that is absolutely amazing. And just thinking one soul has passed away, giving his life away just for another human being is absolutely incredible. These days you don't find people like that, and that's why we are truly grateful. On myself and the Hamad family, we are truly grateful for this act of heroism. And again, we'd just like to say thank you very, very much. And thanking is definitely not enough in this situation, but this will be an act that won't be forgotten. Definitely, we'll remember it for the rest of our lives, and we are grateful. So thank you very much.
With this, we've come to the end of this week's episode of Palestine. Remember, that was totally dedicated to the memory and pain of the massacre of Sabra and Shatila, and also the heroic legacy of Sean Oliver.
It's been 5 years since Sean sacrificed himself trying to save that Palestinian family. Our condolences again extended to his family. May he rest in eternal peace. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tell your friends, share the podcast, and remember, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.